Can I ask you guys a couple more questions before we get into that? This is the speed round questions. This is where I ask you guys a question and you guys answer it as quickly and precisely as you can.
Speed dating.
Speed dating questions.
Yeah.
Why did I not think of that? We could have made this into a game. You know what?
You can't give ideas to this guy.
The next, I told you there's a part 2 to this one, and you just gave me a whole game idea. Why
Thanks,
did I not
Bryce.
think about?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh man, I'm tripping.
Damage
See,
control.
this is it. The singles benefiting
Fix
the
problems.
church. Look at this.
You're welcome, love.
Why don't you guys answer that question I had earlier? Have you seen any good or bad examples of singles in the church? This is free for all. Everybody just jump in at this.
Quick and precise.
I think I already gave my examples.
Right.
I've only seen a couple.
Yeah.
I almost feel like among the younger people, it's like, oh, don't want to be like so and so, they're single. But I also think, again, it's just a measure of the demographics. I don't think there's many singles, especially here in Lancaster. I think if I was living in New York City, a place that's more, it's less family oriented, there would be other examples of that.
Yeah. Do you think the world's view on being single has impacted the church's thoughts on it?
Yes.
How?
I haven't thought. But
I believe that, I think you even see that in what Paul wrote, right? Because he had to encourage the church, like, no, if they're unmarried, that's okay. That's okay that they're not. And we don't have the emphasis that it used to be on women bearing children, and obviously the American culture is different, but I still think there's this idea that you have some type of life partner. Culture might not call it a spouse, right, but it's that person that you're going through life with, as a proof almost of your worth as a person.
Right.
And I do think that has come a bit into the church as to, again, put to the question, I don't understand why you're still single. Meaning there's nothing wrong with you. Right? So if there's nothing wrong with you, you should have somebody.
That's good.
I think the world's view of singleness can impact the church in this way, related to people getting married later than has often been in history. I think the world can have an expectation of you do you first, and you chase your dreams first, you establish yourself first, and then you consider a relationship or marriage. And I think that anything like that, if it's common, it can become somewhat common in the church.
Right. Wasn't that a question that you asked earlier? I think I saw that in the comment section. Was that? No? Okay. I'm tripping. All right. Do you think the level of accountability that the church holds single people to is enough? Is it too much? Is it not enough?
In what way?
In whose church?
Yeah. And again, it's always relative to what church you're going to.
Yeah.
How about your church?
Do I think single people are held accountable enough? Some are. Some, there's been some effort, and maybe some could be a little more. But I think, I guess because there's two layers of that. One is like, are you receptive when people are wanting to hold you or accountable or disciple you? So that's
kind of what I was alluding to. It was like one of those questions where it was like, all right, yeah, it's true. Some singles don't actually allow people to hold them accountable.
That Luke's not saying that there isn't even more of an effort because of a lack of interest, or when somebody's not showing that they, if they're showing that they don't want accountability or whatever, but they're coming to the church, we continue to put effort, into pastoring them, helping them to see Christ. But it's difficult. It is hard to continue to pursue someone and say, I want to walk with you, but they're showing you they don't want to be walked with. Yeah. So it is difficult. Because even some of those folks will say, well, nobody cares for me. Nobody. It's like, I've been calling you. I've been, you know what I'm saying? Right. So that's difficult sometimes, to deal with. But So that, I don't think Luke is saying that we need that in order to, but it helps.
For sure. For sure.
You know, it helps.
I would also say that I don't want to say it's easier, but I think there are ways in which you can hide sin as a single person that you can't as a married person, because your spouse is going to call you out, right? That when you're single, you might not have anybody in your life close enough, and that might be because you don't let them. You're not making an effort. It might just be you're busy. Like there can be a lot of reasons. It doesn't necessarily have to be purposeful, but I think that there needs to be care and just a special community. You would want that in the church anyway, but like an example of this is sexuality. You don't need to be sleeping with someone to be struggling with sexuality.
Right.
Like you don't need anything to struggle with that. And just because from the outside someone seems like they've got it all together, again, like I think as a single person, that's just one example, but I do think there are ways in which it is easier to hide your sin.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Last question. How have your thoughts on being single evolved in your walk? Like obviously when you first became a Christian, being single to the point where you're now, because you're a couple of years in, right? As a Christian, being single, how many years has that been for you?
He doesn't.
I know this is like personal now.
No,
sorry.
Like, how many years have been a Christian?
Yeah, and obviously
like,
you've never been married, right?
No, but
so the whole time you've been a Christian, you've been single.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I believe the Lord genuinely saved me before I was even old enough to think about these things. Yeah. And so, so I could think of maybe my perspective on singleness at like 21 and 31.
10-year gap. 10-year challenge.
So I would have, if I like wrote out my will for my life, I might have got married at like 23, 24 and have like 4 kids and counting by now or something like that. And so I think God has taught and retaught me surrender. And so that's one of the ways that I relate to my singleness. And sometimes surrender through hurt is, God pulls some things out of your heart that, weren't supposed to be there.
Right. And like we talked earlier, a lot of the things that you're learning now are going to play a big role in marriage. That surrender and breaking you down, it's going to play a big role in marriage. It's not just temporary. Like what you're learning right now is just for this season. Or
even if it doesn't lead to marriage. Like,
right. I'm already assuming that you will be married. Right. Look at me.
Even if it doesn't lead to marriage, like you are still, it's worthwhile in that God has a plan and he's molding you, because maybe he's doing that through a spouse. Maybe he's doing that through experiences. But he's got a plan. Yeah. He's got a good plan for you.
Have you seen like an evolution in your own thoughts on being?
Yeah, for sure. So I've been a Christian since I was 4. That's what I say. That's what I think. Anyway, I guess God knows.
It's a story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. So I was blessed. I was raised in church. But I was always that kid that I wanted to be mama. I know not all girls are like that. I have friends who wanted to grow up and be a CEO. And I was like, that's cool. I don't want that. Come from a big family, and I loved it. And I was like, I'm going to go to high school, maybe college, get married, boom, done. Awesome. And then I got, older. I got to high school. Wasn't really meeting anybody. Had a serious relationship out of high school and really almost got married. And kind of got to a point where I was like, this isn't right. I can't. This isn't right. Very painful experience to go through. And I think going through that, though, my mindset started to change to when I get married to if I get married. And that was a very, very difficult switch for me, because to surrendering, I had to let that go. And it had been an underlying assumption my whole life that it just was going to happen. And I think, again, that tension of marriage is good. It's not a bad thing to want. It's when it becomes, through marriage, your life will have meaning. Like, that's a real thing. I can remember crying to my mom, what if I don't have kids, what am I supposed to do here that makes my life meaningful? I'm going to go to work 9 to 5 and make money and then die. Like, seriously, like, apart from Christ in this life, why am I going through all this? Yeah. And I think God has used my singleness to definitely show me my idols, to show me the things that I've been using in place of him. I'm gonna be honest, it's still hard for me. My baby cousin got married this summer, and I was like, dang, like, my baby cousin, and she is married, and this beautiful wedding, and it's like, you dream about your wedding since you're a little kid, if you're a girl, most girls. And for me to have to kind of be like, you know, God, I don't know if that's gonna happen for me. I don't know if I'm gonna get to be that girl, and I'm gonna have this moment. And to surrender that to God, I think it's not once and done. And I think you also go through events and moments where that gets pricked. You know what I mean? So I think that's part of that roller coaster of, you can be doing okay for a while, but then something happens that you almost get, it's just it gets ripped open again. Constantly. You got to refocus. But I think that was a big leap for me to go from, and then also being able to talk to people about it when they were talking to me in that assuming way, to be able to say, listen, I appreciate what you're saying and your sentiment behind it, but like, I don't know if that's going to happen for me. Yeah. You know, I've even had Christians tell me, well, God gives you the desires of your heart. So if you want to get married, that means you'll get married. Why would you say that? Like, that's not helpful, and it's not true. Right.
Why so if you never get married, then that means you never really want to get married.
Like, what? I don't know. Like, that's not cool. So.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's the content today, man. It has been more than great. I'm appreciative really of it, and I can't wait to start chopping some of these clips up and posting them on the basement. So was there something you were going to say before we get into these comments? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
a few things. One is, I have encouraged men who desire to marry and talk about what they look for as a godly woman and a wife, the kind of wife they would look for. Until then, you should be becoming the kind of man that kind of woman would look for. So you can be becoming someone who is desirable for those qualities.
That's good.
And thinking too about so I said marriage is not the destination. In the resurrection, they won't marry or be given in marriage. I'll also say that marriage is the destination, because eventually the bride of the Lamb will be presented to Christ without spot or wrinkle in an everlasting union of love. And so that helps you there is a marriage that lasts forever. And that's the one we put our ultimate hope in and look for ultimate satisfaction in.
I think I said something to the effect of, I can't remember it verbatim, but for those of us who are married, we're not going to be married. And then for those of y'all who are single, you're going to be married. But ultimately, we're all going to be married to Christ. You know what I mean? So this marriage here is temporal, but there is that eternal marriage, that we all have to look forward to.